Hello?
Are we not doing video?
How do I make sure it's a live trend?
It's recording.
How do you know? Okay.
It says it is.
Okay, Gail. I'm doing a project in my EDT 180 class, and we are doing it on some things that we brainstorm and questions that we have about it. One problem that I often brainstorm is standardized testing, and I know you have some experience with that. Could you explain what your experience is with standardized testing?
Sure. I work for several school districts in the state of Alaska, and I do their special education coordination. I coordinate services for them. One of my roles is in helping to identify students who are struggling in the classroom. Not only identify those students and resources, and it may be as simple as an inclusive environment where the student just has access to all those things that will support their learning, and it may be that they are 2 to 3 years behind in the curriculum for whatever reason, other than absences. So they are a student who comes to school every day but still struggles. So we use standardized testing in that situation to identify um, any areas of concern. And so often the areas of concern will come out using curriculum-based assessments, but we need a universal language to kind of speak to each other and follow the federal regulations on what qualifies a student for special education. So we will use standardized tests. And so my experience is doing that in the classroom, or pulling a student whose parents have given permission, pulling a student and assessing them using the Woodcock-Johnson or the Wyatt, which are both academic assessments, and then the Wechsler, which is an IQ-based model, or a unit, which is a nonverbal test of their cognitive abilities. And then we also do use standardized testing for emotional, social, and behavioral areas of concern.
Wow, very interesting. How are standardized tests used in what you do?
Well, so the students in the state of Alaska, in order to qualify for special educations, a student has to show a need for individualized instruction, require individualized instruction, and in order to kind of determine the need for that in this state, and in other states they use different methods, but in the state of Alaska we use what is called a discrepancy model. That is a difference between an IQ score, which is a cognitive assessment, and an academic assessment, which is the difference between what they can do and what they are doing. And then we have to have a gap of it. In this state, it ranges. Some districts have 17-point gaps, 18. Some have as much as a 22-point gap. And then if there is a difference in the standard score between the cognitive test and the academic test of more than that point discrepancy, then the student qualifies for what is called specific learning disability. And that means that they have the ability to do it, or they are capable of doing the work. They're just not doing it. And they have a gap that special education will help fill.
Wow, okay. So, why do you think standardized testing is important to?
Well, I have a bias. I'm not sure I am a big supporter of standardized testing, but I think that it does. So some of the pros for standardized testing is that it's a universal language, so you can use a Wyatt in any school anywhere, and it's all standardized based on the student's grade, age, or yeah, grade or age, and it is a kind of a scale of what other students or other children and that age or grade range are doing. And so you have kind of a marker, and it identifies areas where the student may not be as proficient as maybe they should be. And so it's a way for teachers and students and parents to kind of have a conversation about um, where the student falls or where the student is needing additional or more support. And I think it's important because curriculum can also be designed based on those areas. The student can have specially designed instruction around some of those areas. So there are those pros. Those are kind of the reasons for doing it, is because it's something that we all do, and we all know how to talk about. But I do have a bias.
So you think that it is standardized testing is a good thing?
I think that it can be if you, it can be kind of a conversation starter. I think that we need, and if you have a good clinician, in the state of Alaska, we use school psychologists. In other states, the special education teacher or a clinician can do the assessments. I think that they should be looked at with caution. I think that they can give us a starting point. Good cognitive assessment can help us understand where the student is cognitively, but you have to rule out many things, does the student have vision problems, hearing problems? Do they have emotional problems, anxiety, test taking anxiety, for example? But with the cognitive assessment, if you have someone who's professionally trained and knows what they're doing, they can engage the student and get a pretty good idea of how the student took the test and whether it's an accurate picture of that student's IQ. I think that a lot of the testing that we do takes out the external factors, like the child's home life, whether they had breakfast that morning or not. The fact that they may not know the person who is administering the test, and that may cause stress. Students may have just that moment in time where things aren't just right for them, and it may not be an accurate reflection of what they can do. There's so many variables that can cause an inaccurate result or a less than desirable result. I don't know if desirable is a good word, but it can give you a picture that may only be accurate for that moment in time.
Right, right. So you said a little bit about why it might not be the best way to support a student, but could you explain a little bit more about why standardized testing is not the best way to support a student?
Well, because it's like, so what happens, if you think about it, you look at the students that are, there's a lot in the news right now about parents who want their children in AP classes or gifted classes. And so there are folks out there who teach to the test. They teach children how to answer the IQ tests and how to answer the achievement tests. so that they get a high enough score so that they can move into a gifted or an AP program. I think that is one of the ways that standardized testing can be used in a way that's not necessarily the best for students. So I have lost track here. What was your question? Other ways that it's
Not the best way. Standardized testing might not be the best way to support a student.
Well, and I also think that the test questions, both I mean, I think an IQ test is relevant and I think it's useful, but a lot of the testing questions are, for example, in the state of Alaska, there are many Alaska Native students who do not know a lot of the knowledge questions. They just don't know what a street sign is, what a sidewalk is, what a windowsill is. And a lot of the questions on the test are automatically foreign to them. So we have, we've never been normed or standardized in this state for Alaska Native students. So they're at a disadvantage. We can use nonverbal tests where the students identify patterns and pictures and sequences, and it allows us to see how their brain works. And so again, having a professional providing those standardized tests or administering those standardized tests will be the best way to ensure that they're being used in a professional and accurate manner. I just think that the best way to identify how a student is doing is by using the curriculum that they're being taught every day and gathering information through that. And a lot of states are allowed to use that information. An IQ test is not required in a lot of states to determine specific learning disability. It's based on how they're doing in their classroom, and then they do use the district and state testing numbers to kind of help identify areas of need. I just think we have to be careful. I think it can be an artificial situation, and we may not even know what we're testing by the time we're done.
I agree. I didn't realize about the Alaskan Native kids. Didn't even know about that. So would you say that overall standardized tests are effective or not effective?
I think again, I'm going to say that it's determined by who administers them and how the information is used. I think that hands-on and competency-based assessments are much more accurate in determining a student's needs.
Right.
And so again, I started out telling you I had a bias. I've done enough of these. I've done them in a clinical environment and I've done them in an educational environment. And I know that the biggest part of it, because they are scripted, you must stay with the script, and you're always going to have these sweet little children, and you're going to have young adults who are like, I don't know that. Is that okay that I don't know that? Or I want to keep trying, or can you please tell me the answer? And it can create, if you don't know what you're doing, it can create an environment of just stress. The student can become it's a very rigorous test. It takes, depending on how well the student does, it takes a very long time to get through it, and a lot of the information is foreign. Why wouldn't we use what they're currently being taught, the curriculum-based information, and then assess them at where they are with their peers in their classroom based on what they're already learning?
Yeah, that's right. It seems a little bit unfair to some students who are unable to take the test
or to understand what the questions are,
yeah,
or are being given information that is completely foreign to their culture.
Yeah, so maybe taking that into consideration and
Yep.
creating tests that are that everyone is able to take instead of
Well, individually, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, that's one idea I have come up with through my research and my brainstorming is creating tests that are specific to the individual needs of students rather than one test that everyone takes because it seems a little bit unfair.
Yeah, well, if you have someone who knows how to read the results and knows how to administer, you can feel confident that you've administered it in a way that the student has the opportunity to answer. But then what if that student has had a bad morning and they didn't go to sleep last night because their parents were fighting and they've got all these worries on their mind, and then they come into that testing environment and they're expected to perform. It's very stressful.
Yeah,
I
I
think there are better ways to do it.
yes, me as well. Well, I really appreciate you taking your time to do this interview, and I definitely got some good information. So, thank you.
Well, thank you for studying an area that is so important and so critical to student learning.
Yes. All right. Talk to you later.
Bye bye.